wanted to take you down a slight rabbit hole. And I'm going to try and explain this as clearly and as directly as I can so that, again, this is where things can get interesting. And I'm very aware of this. Not everybody is, but I am. So it's the fact that there are different perspectives all the time. And how you might see something is different to how somebody else might see it. But my main point is this in this video: the importance of understanding yourself and which direction is right for you. I think that's the whole purpose of life. And this is where I think people get really caught up. So the more you as a person, and again, I've talked about this before, but I think it's a concept that can be very difficult for a lot of people to understand. And I think it's one of those things, unless you've figured it out, unless you've cracked that code, it can kind of teeter on people's insecurities and kind of pull at those triggers. So try and stay open and consider the possibility that there's often better ways to do things than the way that we've been taught to do them, the way that we've seen people in our family or whatever have done things. There's always a new possibility. We haven't worked everything out. So, in terms of understanding ourselves, the reason why this is so important, and I think it might be, like I said, for me, it kind of goes hand in hand with self-worth and self-love, because you can't really fully love yourself if you don't pretty much understand yourself either. Right? Now, things I talk about a lot, and I think it's because they're really important, are shame, judgment, lack of self-love, lack of self-understanding. So if you go through life and you have taken on what other people have projected onto you, which is what most people do, and you don't fully understand, love, or accept yourself as you are, it becomes very difficult to determine what is actually you and what you feel about yourself and what is other people and what they feel about themselves. And again, the insecurities between you. Everybody, and that's why I like astrology, human design, and numerology. All of these avenues help you understand yourself in whatever area you're looking into. And when you understand yourself and you understand and you accept who you are, if not completely, then almost, you're almost bulletproof in a way. And once in a while, you might find that, you have a crack here or there. Like I myself, I've had this happen in some of the lives that I've been on. Not very many, considering, but sometimes it happens. This is where things can get interesting. You have to think about what's going on in your life, right? So if you're perhaps you've had a night or a few nights where you haven't been sleeping very well. Maybe you're stressed about something and it's plaguing you, it's affecting your dreams, it's affecting your peace, and it's taking over your thoughts, right? They used, sleep deprivation as a form of torture. So you have to kind of think about that. If you're not sleeping very well, your fuse is going to be shorter. It's going to be more difficult for you to hear what other people are saying in a more positive light. Like you're going to potentially be more irritated anyways. So you're more likely to take things defensively or as an attack or whatever. Again, in astrology, there's certain placements that are more leaning towards defense. Like Aries comes top of the list in my opinion. This is a sign that thinks a lot of things are a threat. So again, if you have that energy pumping inside of you, if you're kind of a type A personality kind of person, or you've got loads of Aries, or, these types of, even number one in numerology, right? This is another type A type of person. So again, there are others, but that's what comes to mind. So if that's the case, you don't have the control that you normally would over yourself. So I personally think it's worth paying attention to when it comes to those types of days. If you notice that you aren't you know what, you're not sleeping very well, it's better where possible to kind of pull yourself back a little bit, because whatever reaction you're going to have is probably not going to be your best one. This isn't perfect, and there's no reason to be upset with yourself. We all have days like this. But it's that understanding, that awareness, that makes all the difference. That's just one example. Let's say you were doing well, and then you came across someone who, you don't really have any compatibility points. And let's face it, we've got 7 to 8 billion human beings on this planet. We are not going to get along with every single one of them. And the only way that you could is if you became really calculating, you deny yourself, and you do whatever makes the other person comfortable. But again, that takes a lot of work. That's a lot of studying of the other person. And again, people might look at that as like people pleasing. I think it's really calculated, personally. Yes, your intention might be to not make anyone uncomfortable or whatever, but at that situation, you're making yourself uncomfortable because you're fighting against your true nature. And for what? For a person who you're not compatible with anyways to still not really be compatible with you, no matter what you do? It starts going down a really crazy rabbit hole, like I said at the beginning of the video. That'll take you the wrong direction. And you won't respect yourself from it either. And I don't mean that in a mean way. I'm really being serious. At the end of it, you will lose sight of who you are. And for what? For someone you weren't compatible with anyway? The whole concept of people pleasing, in a more conventional sense, is that whole denying who you are just so that you do what you think other people want. But again, you never really understand another person, so how can you really do what they want? You're just doing what you would want, or what you think other people want, but it might not be what they want. This is where it starts to get kind of weird. So it's better to not even go down that avenue, because it doesn't help you. The other thing I think that's important is, like I said, these tools. Now, I know a lot of people are, maybe not on this channel, but a lot of people are scared of these types of tools. And you can hear the fear with what they say. They say things like, oh, it's a pseudoscience. It's like, well, why are you so quick to shut something down? Are you afraid of what you'll find out? If it's silly and it doesn't make any sense to you, why not listen to it? There shouldn't be any fear then. Who cares, right? You may not be interested in it, but you shouldn't be afraid of it, and get your back up to defend whatever choice and buckle down. Stay more open. Stay more open to the possibilities. It doesn't have to be this horrible, awful thing. And in most cases, it brings clarity to areas where you were cloudy before. The other thing, I think, is this concept of when people say, well, it takes the control out of my hands. Does it? Because the situation is this: your chart was formed, whether this is human design or astrology. Numerology doesn't really work in a chart sense, but this blueprint was formed the day you were born. It is what you are, whether you want to accept it or not. This is you. It describes your traits, your tendencies, your philosophies, the ways that you go about things from a base parallel sense. Well, not parallel, from a base foundational sense. I think the word parallel came in there for a reason, though, because I think with what I'm about to say next, it's the concept of, yes, there's a foundation point for the chart. But what also comes through is it depends on your state of mind. It depends on, have you had enough sleep? Do you have a healthy lifestyle? Do you do things where your body is getting the nutrients it needs? See, like there's a whole bunch of constituents that come into, are you at the level that you want to be? Because that changes how your traits and qualities are going to come out in terms of your chart. Because there's low vibration and high vibration and everything in between per sign, per placement. So to give you an example, just to make it a bit easier to understand, let's talk, the one I like to talk a lot about when it comes to this type of thing, because I feel like the divide is so huge, it creates an extreme parallel, right? Libra. Now, Libra, in my opinion, this sign has such an extreme divide from the high vibration to low vibration. So, and again, it depends on how you look at it. Wherever you have Libra, and whether it's in a house or it's in a planet or an asteroid, or Venus has some kind of influence in terms of your chart, wherever you have this, if you have it in low vibration, this is a person who is almost allergic to conflict. This is a person who cannot deal with it, will do anything to avoid it. They'll avoid you, they'll avoid the conversation, they'll pretend and tell you whatever it is that you want to hear. Whatever they have to do to not get into this argument, they will do it. Because it's unpleasant, it's unharmonious, it's not beautiful, it's not aesthetic, it's not whatever, and people tend to make a scene when they're in these types of situations, and maybe they get insulting and all the rest of it, and this person doesn't want to hear it. Now, this can also have some caveats of its own. Now, if you're dealing with a person where, again, this can also determine in terms of how you deal with conflict, this can determine whether you're high vibration or low vibration also. Even if you do have a tendency to lean away from conflict, if you're the kind of person where at that level, you're kind of like, well, I don't like conflict at the best times. I admit that. No, I don't think anybody does. But, this kind of person will be like, I really don't want to do this. When you're dealing with somebody who's unreasonable and there is no common ground, is there any point going around and around in circles? No, there isn't. There is no point in doing that. It's insanity. You will never see eye to eye, and it will just become this resentful, insulting mess. So Libra doesn't want to do that. So in that regard, that can also be perceived as high vibration, because this person knows enough to see that there's no point going around in circles and chasing my tail with a person who cannot understand my perspective. But a person who just simply avoids conflict because they're scared of saying what they think, they're scared of being judged, they're scared of being belittled, or any other fearful possibility, that's low vibration Libra. This is not a good thing, because it means that you shrink yourself. So you can see already just in that demographic, we're seeing quite a complexity of this sign and how it shows up. Now, in truly high vibration Libra, again, this can have different caveats as well, but in the true nature of high vibration Libra, this is a person who is excellent at conflict resolution. They are extreme diplomacy, to the point where they can hear everybody's point of view and then form amazing solutions. It's the whole concept of, you know what? Everybody's really heated right now. So let's come back and talk about this later. Okay, everyone's calm now. Let's have this discussion. Even in terms of separation, separating the people who are involved with the conflict, becoming the mediator. Okay, so you were upset with this, correct? Yes, and then blah, 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 blah. Okay, so all of these things are the things that you're upset about in terms of this conflict, right? Yes. Okay, good. Then they go through everybody who was part of the conflict, and then they figure out, okay, so I see some common themes here. And I think that this would be a good solution, at least for most, and if best case scenario, for everybody involved. This is where Libra really shines. Again, there's lots of things in between that, but already we can see just from the sign in its isolation, this is incredibly complex. So however it shows up in you, in your chart, will determine how you go about whatever it is in your life. So again, depending on the house it's in, the placements, it will show you these potential possibilities, and then there's a few others. But it does tend to be around either people pleasing or avoiding conflict, or being a master of conflict resolution, somewhere in between there, right? So that's just one example. And that's why I think these are such amazing tools, because it shows us how we can figure ourselves out. It's not this shot in the dark now, well, I don't know why I act like that. I don't know why I feel that way. I don't know why I'm doing this. And, at the end of the day, if you're a kid, that can be excused, right? Because you're a kid. You don't know who you are yet completely. I don't know, I think kids sometimes know themselves better than adults because they haven't been conditioned, right? If it hasn't been beat out of them, then they have a pretty good idea of who they are and what they're doing, right? So again, it depends. This is where it gets kind of, interesting, and it's all based on perspectives. But as you get older, if you've kept who you are intact, you really shouldn't be having this whole, well, I don't know why I feel that way. I don't know myself, basically. And again, this is where it can be really, that's why I like these tools, because it takes the guesswork out completely. There obviously are, you got to kind of figure out in that particular area, am I defensive in that area? Am I easily hurt and I shut down? Am I comfortable in that arena? How does it show up when I'm comfortable? All of these things, this is where it gets more complicated, and it very much depends on how you feel at that time that it's happening. And you might feel one way at one point and then feel totally different the next, and that changes how it's going to show up. So I'm not saying it's the be and end all and it doesn't give you every answer, but it certainly takes you a lot more out of the dark than not knowing. The amount of things I've learned about myself through going through these processes, learning these skills and these traits, and also studying other people to see certain traits and qualities, because I know myself quite well, I can then identify those things in others based on the fact that we have a similar, placement, for instance. Like I'll meet someone and I'm like, oh, okay, they have this same placement that I have. And then I observe them. And they say similar things, they do similar things. There might be some differences because it might be in a different house or, a different aspect or whatever. But the baseline is there's a lot of similarities. And I laugh because I'm like, oh, that's something I would do. That's how I feel about that, or how I think about that, or whatever. And not just myself, it makes it easier because I know myself, but I can also look at it like someone who, because I also have all the signs, just like everybody else, I can think about, okay, so I know this placement in this person, and I know that I have that particular sign in this area of my chart. Or I know a person who has that placement. I know I've met other people who have those placements, and you start to see patterns. You start to see, oh, okay, so that's what that person with this placement, that's what they care about, right? That's what they think about. That's how they feel, or whatever, Those are the types of things that they say. Those are their actions and their behaviors. So that's why I think these things are so important. And that's why I like to use these as a guide. It isn't the be and end all, and you have to read between the lines. But that's not hard to do once most of the guesswork is taken out of the equation. It also helps you see where a person is in terms of high vibration or low vibration, insecure, secure, wherever, that wants to be. But it's really, really fascinating. And that's why I think astrology, human design, and numerology are such important tools for human beings to use in order to navigate not only themselves, but their purpose in life, the work that they should be doing, the relationships that are best suited, also how to connect with their children and those relationships. Basically, any type of interaction will be made easier by knowing these things about yourself and about others. It takes all of that I don't know out of the equation. Instead, it gives you, again, depends on how connected you are to yourself, but it gives you a strong resonance of things that apply to you, depending on the situation and how it presents itself.